Good afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum Speaker Webinar Series and Podcast. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion today. We are pleased to have Ali Alfoneh, a Senior Fellow at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington and author, join us to discuss Iran's crisis, what's next, which options. Mr. Alfoneh will speak for 15 minutes and open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Mr. Ali Alfoneh.
Good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for your kind invitation and for providing me with this opportunity to share my analysis with you. Now, Iran has got a new president, and of course, everywhere in the world, there is expectation that with a new president comes a new policy, a new way of behavior that the United States must adapt to or try to persuade Iran to behave in a different way than what is anticipated under the new president. Now, I will try to explain to you that a new president may coincide with a new policy from Iran. But it is not necessarily because of the new president that Iran's behavior changes. Iran's behavior has been changing for some time, and that is because of more fundamental reasons, and these are structural issues that I will be discussing with you. More specifically, I will be addressing 4 factors which I believe have been shaping Iran's changed behavior. After discussing these 4 factors, I will conclude the presentation with some thoughts about what I expect Iran to do in the coming months and years. Now, going back to what factors change Iran's behavior, let's take a look at when the change happens. Iran was interested in reaching an understanding, a deal with the world, through the nuclear deal that the Islamic Republic made with the world powers, the so-called Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. However, at the same time, Iran was pursuing some regional objectives which ran contrary to US interests. In those programs, Iran achieved almost 100% success. And if there is one factor which shapes behavior of states, that is victory in wars. Which was, well, first of all, Syria. Iran had a declared and defined goal of preserving the Assad regime in Syria. And Iran achieved that goal in that country. Assad regime survived. His opponents lost the war effort. Many civilians lost their lives. Many more became refugees, either in their own country or abroad. But Iran achieved its strategic objective in Syria. In Yemen, Iran had defined a different goal for itself. Through its Houthi allies, Iran's objective was to deny a military, or for that matter, a political victory to countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which got militarily entangled in the civil war in Yemen. Also, that objective was reached by Iran. So in other words, the strategic lesson learned by Iran was that Iran can engage in proxy warfare and can prevail in those wars. That's a very important lesson from the viewpoint of the Islamic Republic. Second lesson that the Islamic Republic learned was that diplomacy not always works. After all, Iran had achieved an arrangement with the United States government under President Obama. However, as soon as President Trump came to office, he began questioning, and even before that, he began questioning the JCPOA and wanted the United States out. And indeed, the United States withdrew from the nuclear agreement so that the Islamic Republic could no longer benefit from reaching the agreement in the first place. So that is a very important lesson, that you cannot always trust diplomacy. You cannot always trust agreement that you reach with foreign powers. And not even when those agreements are enshrined in United Nations Security Council resolutions that the United States also was obliged by. The United States reinstituted the sanctions regime and pursued practically economic warfare against the Iranian regime. It was called the maximum pressure campaign. Now, remarkably, the Islamic Republic managed to survive the maximum pressure campaign, despite the fact that Iran lost nearly 95% of its oil exports and oil revenue. However, the Islamic Republic managed to boost steel exports, copper exports, and some other commodities that Iran managed to export to compensate for the loss of the oil revenue. Now, this is a significant achievement, just as significant as victories in the wars in Syria and in Yemen, that you are fighting an economic war against the largest economy of the world, the sole surviving superpower, and the regime survived. Now, obviously, the Iranian public suffered, and they protested against the regime several times, but the regime managed to contain those protests and to suppress them effectively. And at no point did the protesters manage to threaten the survival of the regime. Just as important, the Islamic Republic discovered that when people are hungry, they cannot protest in an effective way, and they cannot threaten the survival of the regime. It is usually when people are economically better off that they can plan a successful revolution and overthrow regimes. Now, the third factor which shaped the thinking of the Islamic Republic was that Iran tested the alliance of the United States with US Arab allies in the Persian Gulf region. Iran could not try to change the behavior of the United States under the Trump administration, so it began attacking, pinpoint attacks against United Arab Emirates and against Saudi Arabia. After all, these two countries were the most enthusiastic countries in the Middle East region when the Trump administration withdrew from the JCPOA, from the nuclear agreement. And what did the United States do? Well, nothing. There was a muted response. After the Iranian missile, cruise missile attack against the oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, President Trump was participating at a press conference, along with the Crown Prince of Bahrain. And he was asked, Mr. President, what do you intend to do about Iran's attack against Saudi Arabia? And President Trump very, very clearly said, it was not us who were attacked, someone else was attacked. So in other words, very, very clearly, President Trump illustrated that the United States was not willing to entangle itself in another Middle Eastern war for the sake of its Arab allies. Now, on the balance, Iran achieved something, and also there were certain things that it did not achieve. Those attacks did not make the United States change or cease its maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Iran did also not manage to impact the global price of oil. Changes did take place, within the next, 24 hours after the attack. But after that, the price got back to normal. There was not so much demand for oil in the international market. However, the Islamic Republic demonstrated that the United States was not willing to fight in wars. So Iran's conclusion was that there is really no appetite for war in Washington. And the US Arab allies have been trying to repair their relations with Tehran ever since. Now, the fourth and final lesson that Iran was probably reminded of, it was nothing new that Iran learned, was that, yes, they did mismanage the pandemic, yes, but poor people, sick people, people who are afraid of getting the disease, they do not constitute a lethal threat to the survival of the Islamic Republic. The regime was at no point threatened. Its existence was secured because of the repression mechanisms at the disposal of the regime, which means the police force, the Basij militia, and the Revolutionary Guards. And by the way, the scarce resources of the state could be distributed selectively among regime supporters and keep the population in check. This is not a new lesson for the Islamic Republic, but the regime was reminded that relative poverty of the people can be utilized in order to enhance security and survival of the regime. Now, ending my little presentation here, I would like to make a couple of statements concerning what I believe the Islamic Republic will be doing in the coming months and years. So first of all, do not expect Iran to coming to the negotiation table with the United States as a beggar. The Islamic Republic diplomats, they perceive themselves as winners who have managed to prevail in conflicts and have managed to survive hardships of the past years. And they will not be giving any concessions for free to the United States. Apart from that, the Islamic Republic will also doubt sincerity of the United States government and ability of the United States government to change and dismantle the infrastructure of the sanctions regime, which prevent Iran from benefiting from a nuclear deal. So even if the United States returns to the JCPOA, there is no guarantee that the next administration will honor those obligations of the current administration, the Biden administration. So they have difficulties trusting the US. They will not be giving in or giving easy concessions to the United States. Do not expect that. But do expect Iran to try to strengthen those means that helped it prevail in the conflicts of the past years. First of all, expect Iran to invest more in its Revolutionary Guard and the Basij militia, particularly the Quds Force, which helped Iran prevail in asymmetric warfare, proxy warfare outside of Iran. So the Quds Force will be financed more. The Revolutionary Guard Basij militia will be financed more to secure the regime within Iran, within the cities. Expect Iran to invest more in its cruise missile program, ballistic missile program, but also the drone program, which helped Iran attack, engage in pinpointed attacks against US allies. And in general, expect Iran to pursue a more
No, I think we lost you on that last point. Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi, sorry, we lost you on that last point. Could you make that
yes.
again?
Yes, so do forgive me if the internet is not working properly. I'm in a public space because of some issues. But to conclude my little presentation, expect Iran to engage in more confrontational behavior in the coming months and years. And this is what I am expecting for the coming years. If there are questions, I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you. We have quite a few questions coming in. We have a few questions regarding Afghanistan. Lev Citrin asked, how does America's flight from Afghanistan affect Iran's calculations and behaviors?
Well, most importantly, Iran's lesson learned from Afghanistan is that a neighboring country, Pakistan, has managed to wage a 2 decades long proxy warfare against the United States of America and managed to prevail in that war, managed to defeat the United States, not necessarily in a military way, but managed to defeat America in a political way, managed to win in Washington, managed to change the opinion of the American people, managed to make Americans reach the conclusion that US presence in Afghanistan was more or less futile. Pakistan managed to do it. And at no point did the United States held Pakistan to responsibility and is now leading Afghanistan. So the lesson learned to Iran war. The second lesson, obviously, is that, well, one of the reasons why the United States is not punishing Pakistan, a country which provided a safe haven to a certain Mr. Osama bin Laden, and a country which has been waging proxy warfare against the United States for the past 20 years is that Pakistan is a nuclear power. So in other words, if any country, any third world country wants to engage in bad behavior,
So sorry, I think we lost you again.
how? Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, we lost you on the Pakistan issue.
Should I repeat the Pakistan part or?
Yes, if you could.
Yes, the Islamic Republic's lesson from Pakistan is that. Oh yeah, so I have to ask you because I think I lost I did not hear the question. Can I please have the question one more time?
Sure thing. How does America's flight from Afghanistan affect Iran's calculations and behaviors?
Yes. Iran has learned that it is possible to defeat the United States in proxy warfare. The United States was defeated politically because Pakistan has waged a 2 decades long proxy warfare against the United States. That war took place in Afghanistan and the United States lost. One of the reasons that the United States lost is that the United States did not want to punish a nuclear armed state. And that obviously is Pakistan. So Iran's lesson number 2, apart from efficacy of proxy warfare, is that it is also a desirable thing for any third world country to possess a nuclear deterrence if you want to challenge US interests in the region.
All right, thank you. From Stephen Orlow, how much of a concern is Israel to the Iranian regime? How does Iran view itself militarily in a conflict with Israel?
The Islamic Republic is fearful of Israel because Israel is practically a fortress. And it is also a garrison state, meaning that the citizenry is willing and capable of defending itself. Now, in that sense, there is a big difference between, let's say, the Arab allies of the United States in the Persian Gulf region and Israel. Israel is a garrison state and a fortress. Those Arab states are, relatively vulnerable states. How many hours can Dubai survive without electricity, without air conditioning, without luxuries of life? What will happen if there are 5 suspicious arson attacks against luxury hotels in Dubai? So these countries are extremely vulnerable to potential Iranian aggression. Israel is not. And by the way, Israel is a nuclear armed state. Iran is not. In those senses, yes, Iran is extremely fearful of Israel and is trying to compensate for the military superiority of Israel by trying to open up new fronts against Israel. Try to build, for example, a missile deterrence so that Israel shows some
Sorry, we lost that last point.
Iran can never achieve immunity and total deterrence against Israel because Israel is a nuclear armed state and Iran is not. But Iran is trying to build some kind of a deterrence, for example, by strengthening its missile program.
Wonderful, thank you. From Mehrdad Kansari, while acting tough, does the new Iranian president at this time need some sanctions relief to deal with increasing domestic economic and other problems that have resulted in unprecedented protest? Will he not see a new deal?
I do believe that the Islamic Republic desires a new deal, but I am skeptical that the United States would give the kind of concessions that the current US administration is asking for, particularly if the United States cannot see Iran deliver such concessions.
Thank you. From Isaac Cohen, if no JCPOA is signed, is Iran concerned of an Israeli military attack to destroy its nuclear facilities?
The Islamic Republic is always concerned about that, and there have always been, in the past years, there have been very, very serious cyber attacks against Iran's nuclear program. So yes, that certainly is something that Iran is fearing, and Iran would fear that even if there is a JCPOA. So Israel is a constant issue. Iran and Israel are regional rivals, and that problem did not be solved in the short term. The only way that Iran and Israel can find an accommodation in the Middle East region is if there is an enemy, a country which is both the enemy of the Islamic Republic and of Israel. In the past, we have seen very good and sensible cooperation between Iran and Israel. Throughout the first 8 years of the history of the Islamic Republic, Iran and Israel cooperated with each other covertly. Iran imported American spare parts for its military through Israeli middlemen and the Israeli government. So it is not impossible to imagine a return to that kind of cooperation at some point. But what Iran and Israel need in order to achieve that degree of cooperation is a shared enemy. If there is no shared enemy, it's difficult to imagine it.
Understood. Thank you. From Brian Cox, how is the relative strength and resolve of the Biden administration viewed by the Iranian regime? Will this encourage an even greater level of aggression by Iran?
I am expecting the Islamic Republic to behave in a more confrontational way. And it is not necessarily related to the behavior and statements of President Biden and the Biden administration, but it has everything to do with the strategic lessons learned by Iran, the lesson that you can win in a proxy war, the lesson that you can persevere under severe economic sanctions regime, the lesson that the population can be suppressed in an effective way, and the lesson that you can even mismanage a pandemic and still survive. And by the way, the lesson that the United States under President Trump did not defend its allies. So why should this administration do such a thing? It is not just the Biden administration. It is the general experience that Iran has had for the past almost 10 years, which guide Iran towards adopting a more confrontational.
Okay. And you mentioned that Iran has survived these things, the economic sanctions and all of that. Do you think that a longer maximum pressure campaign would have been more effective? How long can Iran really survive?
That's a very good question. And if you, whenever we confront the officials from the Trump administration, this is exactly the argument that they're mentioning, that had President Trump gotten 4 more years in office, the Islamic Republic would come to the negotiating table and would surrender. Now, the problem with counterfactual speculations is that there will also be some other factors that we need to take into consideration. Would Russia and China allow the Islamic Republic to collapse? Or would they increase their support to the Islamic Republic to deny victory to the Trump administration? No. This is the problem when you have a multipolar world or near multipolar world with great powers whose interests do not necessarily align with the interests of the United States. So even if President Trump had gotten 4 more years in office, we may have seen more Chinese oil imports from Iran. After all, if the Trump administration is simultaneously waging economic warfare against China and Iran, why should China not help Iran survive that maximum pressure campaign?
Thank you. So Iran basically diversified after the oil sanctions. Carrie Hildebrand asked, can you address the Iranian involvement in the drug trade in the Northern Triangle?
I cannot answer that question because the remarkable thing is that of all the sanctions that the United States has imposed against the Islamic Republic, drug and narcotic related sanctions are not among them. So if there was serious cases of Islamic Republic systematic engagement in narcotics trade, why were no sanctions imposed on Islamic Republic during the Trump administration? It would have been obvious and a very easy one. So I do not have access to classified information, but I do suspect that there probably are not, there's not documentation enough to document such an engagement.
Thank you. And Paul Sokin asked, will Iran try to destroy Israel completely, either by nuclear weapons or conventional arms? Sorry, we already passed the Israel topic, but let's go back for a minute.
No, but thank you for the question. So first of all, I think the esteemed questioner believes that the Islamic Republic is a principled regime, a regime believing its own propaganda. Now, I don't believe that. I believe that the Islamic Republic and the leadership of the Islamic Republic are extremely corrupt. Why would they try to destroy Israel, which already possesses nuclear arms? These people are more interested in the heavenly paradise that they have in Tehran, rather than the theoretical paradise, which they may get access to in the next world. So a corrupt regime is not necessarily that ideological. I don't see them trying to destroy Israel with any kind of weapons. But I do see the relationship between Iran and Israel, just like the relationship between France and Germany until the end of World War II, or Spain and Great Britain, in the 16th century. And I can just go on and on. These are two regional powers competing with each other, and they have disagreements. They have two different visions for the Middle East. And Iran has been trying to contain Israel and contain Israeli influence in the Middle East region. And it has not been a particularly successful policy. We have seen Israel normalizing its relations with the Arab countries. And I suspect that, at some point, not now, but at some point, Iran and Israel will also normalize their relations. As I said, Grand Ayatollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, and Mr. Khamenei himself, who currently is the leader, all of them were involved in secret deals with Israel from 1979, actually, until 1988. During the time that Islamic Republic was holding American diplomats hostage, Iran was buying arms and spare parts from Israel. And the US government was very upset. President Carter was upset that Israel was selling arms to Iran. So these countries, yes, there's plenty of propaganda, but I'm not entirely sure that they believe in the propaganda they are delivering to the masses.
Thank you so much for that explanation. In our last few minutes here, can you just tell us possibly what the US could do to deal with Iran, especially given these 4 points you've made?
So first of all, I hope that the United States manages to devise a comprehensive strategy for
Sorry, we lost you at the start of that.
one. Second thing is that the United States also needs to find out what it wants from Iran and what it is capable of delivering. Is the United States, for example, capable of delivering meaningful sanctions release in return for meaningful Iranian concessions in those negotiations? And can the United States, and not only this administration, but also the elites of the Republican Party, can they ever agree on also at states president and the cabinet ministers of the United States actually means something. If
Unfortunately, we're missing most of this.
States
I'm so sorry. We actually missed most of your answer. Okay. Well, we're at the half hour, so I'm so sorry we missed that very important information on what the U.S. can do. But unfortunately, we've come to close of our webinar. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties. This was a last minute change. But thank you again to Mr. Alfoneh for joining us today. And thank you all for joining us. And I hope you have a great weekend.